Research shows that teens are increasingly snapping nude photos and sharing them with their peers. It's believed this could be fueling an increase in reported child pornography cases. For more on this, we're joined by social media law specialist Emma Sedlia. Emma, thank you so much for your time on The Lead this afternoon. So we're seeing this trend of teenagers taking and sharing nude photos, and there appears to be an increase. What is this attributed to?
Well, thank you for discussing this important topic, because it really is one of those areas where prevention is better than cure. And I think that education is so important, and we're not having the conversation. I think that we are, as South Africans, generally quite conservative and don't want to discuss this kind of thing with our children. But the truth is that this kind of behavior is starting younger and younger. And as soon as that content exists, it exists. And I think the reason that we're seeing so much more of it at the moment is because everybody is spending more time online, with people spending more time online because they are remote schooling. A lot of kids last year were forced onto devices earlier than they would perhaps have been, and maybe earlier than their parents were planning to give them phones or computers or laptops. And I think with that rushed response to the pandemic and to lockdown and to online schooling, I think a lot of the education was lacking.
What is it that parents can do to try and keep track on what their children are busy with on social media, just so, like you said, prevention is better than cure?
Yeah, look, I think being a parent is a very difficult thing these days, mostly because the children are always going to be ahead of us from a technological point of view. So I think, you can have parental control apps on your phone, on the child's phone. The apps that come standard with a lot of these smartphones, whether it's Google Family Link on Google or Apple Screen Time on the Apple devices, are pretty comprehensive in terms of which platforms they're using, which apps they're on, how long they're spending on the apps, the time that they're on those apps, the time of day, they can be pretty good. The big daddy is an app called Bark. It's a paid service. It's an American product, and it's very, very effective in terms of picking up keywords. But I don't think that the big brother response is the right response. For me, it is having discussions with your children, making sure they understand the consequences from a legal point of view, from a reputational point of view, of what can go wrong when this content lands up in the wrong hands. And it's trying to understand, getting our children to understand that it's not where, if this content lands up in the wrong hands, it's when. Because digital content is dangerous content, and they might send that content to one other person, who sends it to one other person, and that content gets circulated. Or maybe it's even a picture they took on their phone and never sent it to anyone, but their phone got lost or hacked, or a friend who they had a fight with knew their password and was able to access it, and that content was distributed. So it's really trying to get children to understand in all contexts, not just sexting, the vulnerability and danger of digital content, that as soon as something exists in my phone or inside somebody else's phone, the potential exists for it to be published far and wide. So if you wouldn't put it on the billboard, don't let it exist in your phone.
And the thing is, one, it could end up on the dark web, right, which then fuels your child pornography syndicates. But the other ways, as you've indicated, is if you're sending these pictures to your peers, they could circulate them. Just remind us why those who end up with such pictures must not circulate them, because there are penalties.
So there are penalties. So in South Africa, the minimum age of criminal capacity is 12 years old. From the age of 14, full criminal capacity. And what that means, that if a child under the age of 18, but over the age of 14, sometimes even 12, depending on the child, sends or gets involved in sexting, right? They can be prosecuted under South Africa's child pornography laws. It's the creation, distribution, sometimes even solicitation of child pornography. So even though that child is taking a picture of themselves, the potential exists, and I believe the law is wrong in this regard, but that's what the law says, for that child to be criminally prosecuted. And we have seen those cases in South Africa. So from a legal point of view, there's that. Under the Films and Publications Amendment Act, which was signed by President Ramaphosa in December 2019, but we're still waiting for regulations to be finalized, so we don't have an official commencement date. But under that law, the non-consensual distribution of private or sexual images will attract a criminal prosecution. So that basically means if you send or show a picture, a naked sexual picture or private sexual picture or video of somebody without their specific consent, that can attract a 4-year prison sentence or 300,000 Rand fine. So those are serious penalties for what we call revenge pornography, but it's something that can apply to our children even when they are teenagers because they have criminal capacity. But Clement, as you say, the big issue is the reputational harm and the content potentially landing up on the dark web or on Pornhub or one of these other big pornographic websites. And as much as these big websites are better regulated than the smaller ones. So, for example, if that picture that your teenage daughter sent to her boyfriend and then they broke up and the boyfriend circulated it and one of his friends uploaded it onto a porn website, we generally have success getting that content removed because it is child pornography.
Yeah.
The issue is that once it's on one of those big porn sharing websites, it filters down very quickly to other websites. And for example, Twitter and those kinds of accounts, it's very difficult to stay on top of where these images might pop up in the future. So I've had teenage clients, Clement, having to change their names to escape what comes up on the internet when I Google them because this content has landed up in the wrong hands.